As you know by now, U.S. and Canada trade talks collapsed, and new U.S. tariffs kicking in over the weekend. Canada now preparing its own retaliatory levies. And joining us now, Jamieson Greer, U.S. Trade Representative. Would love to hear, Mr. Ambassador, exactly what happened in your view. And I know you'll give an absolutely objective analysis of both sides and what went on. But how would you characterize the breakdown in talks? What caused it?
Well, thanks, Joe, and thanks for having me on. And to your point, I will be as objective as possible, and I don't want to characterize anything that the Canadian senator did. That's kind of their thing. Just remember how we started with all of this. The Canadians over a year ago, they prohibited the sale of American wine and spirits in their stores. They put limits on how many autos could go into Canada. And even before that, they restricted the sale of U.S. dairy into Canada. So lots of new and long-standing issues with Canada. After about a year of asking them to eliminate these, they said no. So we proposed some very tailored tariffs covering about 5% of what they send us. So pretty low amount in the grand scheme of things to have our own tariffs on those to counter out that retaliation. The Canadians came to us about a month ago. They said, we'd like to negotiate. We didn't ask for it, but we said, okay, we're happy to move forward in good faith, and we did, and they did. We progressed to a point Tuesday night where we had enough agreement among the parties to announce that we had found the way to a deal. Then we set about to finalize it. And then in the last hours, I think there were things that the Canadians just, they wanted more. We offered them the best access to the United States of any country in the world. Obviously, there's always going to be tariffs, and there's going to be that protection for American workers and companies. That's the president's trade policy. That hasn't changed. But we sought to accommodate the Canadians by giving them, by cutting tariffs in half on steel, on aluminum, and extensively reducing them on autos and even on things like softwood lumber, accommodating some element of that. Things that are sensitive for the Canadians. They wanted more. I don't know if it was political for them. It certainly doesn't make economic sense, but perhaps for political reasons. They have some by-elections coming up. I don't know, but they came in and they wanted more, and we weren't prepared to do that.
So many ways to approach it. You can see the markets today basically unchanged, even though the headlines in every paper are that the U.S. and Canada are spiraling towards a trade war. Maybe a year and a half ago, that would have caused more consternation. I think in the back of people's minds, Jamieson, that we think this is just another negotiating step along the way to arriving at something. Are the markets wrong about that, or is that how you view it at this point, that an agreement will be reached pretty soon?
Well, Joe, I think the markets understand that this affects a very small amount of trade. Ultimately, I know the Canadians use histrionics like trade war and all these kinds of terms. We don't do that. I mean, the United States, again, we're set on our trade policy. The Canadians asked to come and negotiate with us a month ago, so of course, if people ask, we do. So we don't have any issue proceeding with our trade policy as planned, and I think the market understands that. I think the market knows that at the end of the day, this is 5% of imports from Canada. It's 0.06% of our overall consumption in this economy. So there's no possible way it can really affect U.S. well-being, right? I mean, we've been having great prints on inflation the past couple of months, going down in June and staying flat here. Real wages for manufacturing workers going up. So we're on the right trajectory. The fundamentals are good, and I don't think this is going to affect anything. That's why I think the markets are shrugging it off.
The affordability issues, I think that's a red herring as well in terms of this. I can't imagine. But can you confirm that Prime Minister Carney, it was a heavy and medium duty truck not easing to, was that the straw that broke the camel's back when the U.S. wouldn't lighten up on those tariffs? And some of that is Ford. I mean, the Journal points out you're really just cutting off our nose to spite our face in terms of Ford in this regard.
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind is the only reason Canada has auto production in the first place, and we've talked about this before, in the 60s, Canada did a very Trumpian thing, and they came to the United States and they said, if you're going to sell into the Canadian market, you have to build here. And there was an auto pact, and at the time, the U.S. economy had a ton of leverage. They didn't think too much about the future of deindustrialization. and so they moved some plants to Canada. For a long time, for weeks, I've essentially been telling the Canadians, I'll see what I can do to deliver some results for you on a handful of these tariffs that are important to us for national security reasons. We don't change them lightly. They're very important to the president. They're very important. They've driven reindustrialization. And so we were able to come back with a package, and they said, well, we want the scope of that to be more. It's not just cars, it's not just passenger trucks, it's not just SUVs, it's not just pickups. We want the heavies. We want the heaviest trucks available. It's a sector with different economics and everything, and so that was just one of many things that the Canadians wanted an expansion on.
Ambassador, when did you get your reaction? There's a Politico story that sort of tries to walk through the past 72 hours over the weekend. You may or may not agree with this, but I wanted to get your side of the story. The report says that, quote, the negotiations also exposed friction between Greer and U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick's respective public policy spheres. While the White House has been adamant officials are in lockstep, two people familiar with the talk said that Lutnick felt that the deal framework hammered out by Greer's trade office was, quote, sprung on his agency despite involving a number of policy issues he oversees. What do you think?
Well, Politico's a little garbage in, garbage out, as I think a lot of us know. Howard and I talk together every day. We work together every day, and we only act at the direction of the president. So there's not really a lot of freelancing going on. And Howard's agency, the Department of Commerce, they have authority over Section 232. So Howard and I met together with the Canadians on these issues. When there were some of these last-minute issues, again, we talked. So this is something where I don't have the time or energy or patience to have a different view than my cabinet colleagues or the president. So we work together really, really closely on that. I understand it could be frustrating for Canadians that we have tariff authorities in two different agencies, but that's how Congress set it up, and so we work together. And importantly, we do what the president says. So I think that's a little bit of a red herring. The reality is, for a long time, we told the Canadians, here are some things where we think we can deliver you the best deal in the world. Well, you'll have preferential access over every other country into the United States, and you will be the most preferred partner. And they said, well, we actually need a better situation than that, and walked away.
So you can't tell us when this comes around. Does the president view the trade deficit with Canada differently than other nations, Jameson? It's also pointed out almost all of that is oil, which we want to import oil from Canada, heavy crude, which we can handle down here. So without that, there would be a trade surplus. This isn't one of the instances where just because there's a deficit, the president wants to do tariffs.
Well, the deficit does matter. In some ways, Joe, that's a little bit of an accounting gimmick. You could just as easily say, we're happy to have the oil because we get it at a discount, but why should we be importing, cars and all these other things at the time? So it just depends. You can kind of pick your product and say, but for that, we wouldn't have a deficit. In this instance, people are picking oil because it's convenient. And I agree, we do want to get that oil. We have minerals. We have natural resources in Canada we want to have. Again, we offered a partnership to the Canadians, really economic and security partnership, where if everyone's protecting their market in an equal kind of way, the United States is in a better position to modify tariffs in some ways, but that was an area where the Canadians declined, or we had a difference of view.
You speak French,
I do speak
Jameson?
French. I do.
So
I really
you don't
value
care whether
French.
they change some of the language up there, whether they make it.
No, I mean that was a funny fake story, and I don't think that. I mean that I speak French too. My kids speak French. One of my kids was born in Paris, so I like the Québécois, and I like that they speak French. What we don't like is a situation where Canada, the federal government, forces American tech companies to take their earnings and give a percentage to their competitors in Canada. But I understand why the Québécois want to have French language content and all of that, and we think that's a really valuable thing, and we encourage countries to really put their own country first and put their national identity first. That's actually quite consistent with
so what is
America
that? So
first.
what is that about then, Ambassador? There was some reference to the idea that we wanted some of it to be either in English or that English had to be first or something like that. True? Not true?
That is not true. I can tell you that's not true. I think that's just, I don't know what that is about. I mean, it's what I said. There are countries like Australia and like Canada where they go to somebody like Netflix or other streamers and they say, okay, you make X money, you're going to take 5% of that and you have to give it to Canadian content producers or Quebecois content producers or Australian content producers, and that's what you have to do. And we think that's a discriminatory tax on American companies. But we have no problem with French language. We like it. We think it's great.
Can you tell us anything about what we'll hear from the Treasury Secretary, or without front running what he's going to say? Can you give us an idea?
Well, he has his article out in the FT talking about what's going to happen with Iran and those who support Iran. So I don't want to get too far ahead of him. But the reality is the president is very confident using all levers of power he has, using the U.S. market to shape global events. The president is trying to open up a lane for American families, American companies, American workers to operate in the coming century with full freedom, economic freedom, democracy, liberty, all of those things. And he wants to go around the world economically, security position, and eliminate hotspots so that we have a strong runway for the United States.